Hello and welcome back. This is Computer Science and Engineering 120, Learning to Code. This module is manipulating data 2 using jQuery. In this first part, we'll give a quick introduction to jQuery, including its basic usage. jQuery is a JavaScript library that simplifies common tasks in JavaScript. It was first introduced in 2006 and today is the most popular JavaScript library out there. It provides easy ways of selecting sets of DOM elements or individual elements in an HTML file. It provides many functions that can be applied to such elements to manipulate and change the document. There are two companion libraries, jQuery UI and jQuery Mobile, that provide additional user interface elements. jQuery can be downloaded and used as a local library from jQuery.com. However, for our purposes, it'll be easier to hotlink to a content delivery network, a CDN. To do this, we include the following script tag in the head of any HTML document. When a user requests and loads a page, the browser will realize that there's an external script file and will also go out and download it and load it into the page as well. jQuery allows you to select an element or a set of DOM elements. Recall that DOM stands for Document Object Model. To select elements, we use the selector function, which is simply just a $sign followed by parentheses, inside which we place a selector. The selector follows the same rules as CSS. We can specify multiple selectors and use combinators. We can also select by ID or use in classes. Some examples. The first one selects all paragraph elements within a document. The second one selects all paragraph and div elements because it's separated by a comma. The second one is a descendant selector, so it selects all anchors within all paragraphs. The fourth rule uses a hash, which will select an element by its ID. Finally, the dot syntax will select elements that have the given class. Let's take a look at an example. On the left we have our source code, and on the right we have the rendered page. There are many parts to this document, including several divs, ordered and unordered lists, links, paragraphs, etc. Let's start by selecting all paragraph elements. When we do this, we get a set. There are 4 elements in here. The introduction paragraph, 2 paragraphs in between, and a message paragraph, corresponding to this paragraph, this paragraph, this paragraph, and this final paragraph down here. Let's select all list item elements. This gives us 9. There are 3 elements in the menu on the left, and there are 6 elements in the list on the right. Both are unordered lists. We can use combinators to select multiple elements. Let's select all list items as well as paragraphs. Here we should expect 13. There are 4 paragraph elements and 9 list items. If we omit the comma, we will be selecting all paragraphs within list items, but there are none. We could select all paragraphs within div elements, of which there are 4, the same 4 paragraphs, as all 4 paragraphs appear within div elements. Let's select an element by ID. Here we have menu list. That's the menu on the left-hand side. Let's select it. We use the hash syntax here. And there's only one, as we would expect when selecting something by ID. We can use a combinator here as well to only get those 3 list items that appear in that particular list. Now let's use the class selector, using the period operator. There's a class named foo, and there are 2 elements that have that class. In particular, there are 2 list items with that class, corresponding to the course introduction and introduction to CSS list items in the main list here. jQuery selectors result in a set of DOM elements. This could possibly be empty, or it could possibly be of size 1. We can then manipulate these elements using several functions that jQuery provides. We'll take a look at several of these functions later on in the next part, but to illustrate their usage, we'll focus on the CSS function, which allows you to alter the styling properties of individual DOM elements. It takes 2 arguments, the CSS property that you want to set and the value that you want to set it to. Both of these are strings. The full syntax is to use a selector, then a dot, then the function call, providing the arguments inside the parentheses. Consider these examples. Here we select all paragraph elements and apply a new CSS rule using font size 14 point. The syntax here is the selector, $, selector, then we use dot, CSS is the function name, and then the two arguments are separated by a comma. Both of them are strings. Likewise, we can set the color to red, or the background color to a light gray. Any selector will work. The function will be applied to all of the results of the selector. Here again we have our page. Let's go ahead and change the styling of all paragraph elements. We'll change the background color to green. All 4 paragraphs now have a background color of green. Note, however, this does not change the original HTML code. No rules were actually changed in the source. And in fact, if we refresh this page, it returns to its original styling rules. The effects of jQuery functions only apply to the page when it's loaded into memory. Reloading the page reloads the original content into memory, erasing any changes that you might have made. You can also change styling rules based on a class selector. Here, those 2 elements that had the class foo will change their font size to 20 point, making them significantly larger. Only those 2 elements are changed, the first and the last element in the list. The first element has an ID of intro. Let's change its color to blue. Let's use a combinator to change the styling of all the list elements in the menu list. jQuery is also designed with a fluent design pattern. Essentially, this allows you to chain function calls into one executable statement. For example, we can change 3 different style rules with one selector as follows. Note here that the semicolon is not included on the first 2 lines. Instead, we just continue with function call, function call, function call. This has the added benefit that the selector only has to traverse the document object model once to apply 3 different color rules. Let's take a look at an example. Here we've created 3 selectors, changing 3 different CSS properties for all paragraphs. We could write them separately, or we could chain them. You could write them as one long line, but it's difficult to read. Instead, you can format them by simply adding some white space and indentation to make them more readable.